I think they're worried that if they don't
I would have
get it
sent you a
again,
message,
it's gonna
I
be used
thought of
against
it
us.
afterwards.
At the end of my truck, I'll
They
get
used to
it.
hate the man. Remember that?
That's right.
When they were Woodstock people,
That's right.
they were against the man, and
Now
now
they
they're
are.
supporting him.
Hey, Johnny, how you doing?
There's more half my coffee in my truck. Not half, but
Hey, Big Brother
Yeah.
watching.
happens.
We have no gravity. It's working against us all the time.
That was a baby ghost.
Put those cars
You're
up.
coming right along.
They're on
Yeah, I
the-
had last year with Cop City.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, I got some elbow and some porridge. From the same, sandwich.
Sandwich, huh?
Yeah, yeah, they great.
Awesome, yeah.
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 Thank you, I heard that.
Well, because you know he's living it. He's got his own farm and
Right,
so you know he's not theory, he's doing it too.
Right.
Every time it would be, I just kind of look down the table at him and he winks at me.
Let me just call you, you know my number?
You should deliver it to their office.
Right?
We deliver.
Get the dollies.
Yeah, we take 5 boxes down every day and we'll come to go take them.
I offered to scan for him, he's like, no, you don't have to do
Oh,
that
wow.
for me.
10 o'clock.
Okay.
Yeah, he was cheap and yeah.
Call to order the meeting of the Board of Commissioners for April 11, 2024. It is 10 o'clock. Please join me for the pledge.
Allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all.
Justice for all. That's a farce.
Do we have any media questions?
No one on the Zoom.
Okay. And do we have any public comment?
Yes, Fred Kane from Wolfboro. I went to my hairstylist this week and he told me that people are watching the meeting, so that's promising. Can the county tell me if all the hay from the previous years up in 2024 have been paid for now?
I can't tell you that. I don't have that information handy.
So we don't know if,
I personally do not know. No.
is that something that commissioners can find out and let us know?
Do you have any other comments?
Yep. I've requested a digital copy of the text messages that were sent to Will, from Will to Kevin and all that whole batch, and I have not received them. Am I going to receive a digital copy of those text messages?
All right. Any other comments?
Kevin, can I have your copies? And
I
make
take
a
that
copy of
as an-
Staples?
as
Thank you
no-
very much.
Yeah, no, here.
Also, I've requested what the county has spent for agency staff from January 1st to March 31st and a right to know. I have not received that information yet. I've also had a right to know on March 8th in regards to the hay, and I haven't received that information yet. And as I'm sure the commissioner is aware, 5 days we're supposed to receive that information with a right to know. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Do we have the minutes for Hale? I didn't see them in our...
You have another public comment.
Oh, I'm sorry. I'm sorry, I didn't see it today. Okay.
Yeah, Kevin will live down the road here. I went to the, well, actually, yesterday I had a little meeting with Melissa and Will and Mr. Nelson there. But I'd like to, really stress the fact that what the First Amendment, there's 2 components to the First Amendment. And number one, this is a public building, and it's a public meeting place, and it's not like Hannaford or Walmart. It's not privately owned. It's public, and when I walk in Melissa's office, which is public, I have every right in the world to film everything. I'm not going behind anything that says private or, no closed doors or anything like that. But I didn't appreciate being scolded and actually threatened to have be removed by the sheriff, by Commissioner Nelson there. Because I'll tell you, it would be a Section 40, 1983. I suggest you all look that up, 1983. Thank you. And don't ever tell me to shut my camera off. You know, there's cameras in pens, there's cameras everywhere today. And in public, I'm going to film everything, especially if somebody's going to invade my space and call me a liar. I want it on film. Because it's non-biased. It's non-biased, and it records everything. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other public comment? And then I will again, Hale's minutes, Melissa?
I don't have any.
Okay, so we'll, there is
You can
nothing for
hold those.
Hale, so we will skip that.
Thank you.
Okay, approvals. We have minute meetings for April 2nd.
I'll make a motion to accept the minutes.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Accounts payable for April 10th, $454,608.42. Payroll for April 5th, $300,602.53. Payroll for April 12th, $231,315.71. Any questions, gentlemen? I need a vote to accept.
Motion to accept.
I'll second.
Okay. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Going in the basket.
Thank you.
Annual report, do we have?
We have 2 items we're waiting for still for the
Okay.
report, so we could just keep holding that. Thank you.
Okay.
I think Bonnie's going to speak to one of those after Bob's
Okay.
time.
Bob? NBC laundry truck, what do you have for us?
Good morning. For the public's information, last week we opened up a bid for our laundry service truck. And I've had an opportunity to go over the bid and I'm ready to make a recommendation. As you know, we only received one bid. The bid was slightly over budget by $3,725. But I talked with Bonnie, and she didn't see any problem with asking the commissioners or the delegation if I could sacrifice one of my 6 ceiling lists that we had planned on buying, buy 5 instead of 6. That's not going to have any detriment on anything. So I don't need to ask for any more money, I just need to ask for repurposing of $3,725. It's within the line, no line item transfer is necessary, I just need the commissioner's approval. And ultimately, I think we need the delegation's approval.
What's the life expectancy of one of these trucks?
In a place like this, where it's not going to see a lot of mileage, we're lucky if we do a couple hundred miles a year. It's really, corrosion is probably going to kill the truck eventually in 15 years maybe.
A while.
It'll be here after I'm gone. I've played the game with used trucks, and when people get rid of trucks, they're typically done, spent. The last 2 trucks I've only been able to get a few years out of before they're not worth putting any money into, so that's why we went this route this year. So with the commissioner's approval, I'd like to move forward with the purchase of the truck.
Any further questions?
Is the old truck of any value?
I'm going to put it out. It's going to go out for sale. Somebody might give us $500 for it, $1,000 if we're lucky. But it's non-inspectable. It's got a good motor in the transmission, but as far as everything else, it's spent.
Make a motion to approve.
I'll second that motion.
$73,725, correct?
Correct.
I second that motion.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
All right.
Something else?
I think, Madam Chair, if we could have a separate motion to reallocate in the capital expenditure.
Okay.
Could you walk me through how much money that is?
$3,725.
The chair of the delegation asked for.
No line item transfer because it's within the same line.
Okay.
It's just a reallocation from one item to another.
So moved.
Second.
Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Okay.
Thank you. And I'll
All right.
forward that to the delegation, the executive committee.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. You're up.
Okay, so I'm sure you're aware that we were notified by the New Hampshire Department of Justice regarding trust fund reporting. If you're not, annually the finance over at the nursing home completed a form that was submitted to the Department of Justice for the gift card account at the nursing home. And as a result of her submission this fall, it came back to us that it was insufficient. So the executive coordinator did an excellent job of researching and speaking with Department of Justice and speaking with New Hampshire Department of Revenue, and handed you all a report on each one of those funds. So I reviewed it, and I was concerned about a few things, so I pulled it back to research it further. Basically what it is we have a doobie fund, that's a CD, that was given to us with no restrictions. So we've been carrying that in the nursing home with no restrictions. 2 years ago with the previous nursing home administrator, the CD came up for renewal. She asked to have about $20,000 taken out and put aside, which we did in the Z escrow account for nursing education. So the remaining balance is still in the CD at TD Bank. Okay, no restrictions. We also have the gift card account, which we only have an approximation of when that was created. There used to be a nonprofit for the nursing home that took in funds, paid out items like Christmas gifts on behalf of the residents. When that nonprofit dissolved, it became part of the county nursing home. So we have that as a separate checking account. And that is what has been being reported by the nursing home annually. This year, actually during the audit, we received a letter from a fund, Eleanor Black, Seinlinger Nurses Fund, that there was funds put away and the county was one of the recipients, beneficiaries when the estate was settled. The county receives an annual interest amount in approximately $1,200 to $1,300 interest every year that goes into the county. So those three funds, in addition to the accrued benefit non-capital reserve fund and the capital reserve fund, need to be reported on the MS-9 form to the Department of Revenue. The difference between the first three funds that I just explained to you is those are true trust funds. And they need to have appointments of trustees, which is the county treasurer, one commissioner, and one delegation member. Delegation member is assigned by the chair. So we would need you three to appoint one of you to be a trustee. And what that means to you, here's a report for each one of you. And there's a draft of the MS-9 behind it done, which will be signed when we have the trustees. The Doobie Fund just earns interest. So there's really nothing that needs to be done other than you know, if the trustees decide they'd like a monthly or a quarterly, semi-annually report, whatever you decide. The Eleanor Black Fund, we get a statement once a year. The money goes in as a deposit. Again, really nothing for you to do. The gift card account is a little bit more complicated because there are disbursements from it from time to time during the year. So that has to be pulled back and authorized by the trustees, okay? Money comes in as donations, and in the tracking for FY24, money has come in for specific purposes. So we're going to really need to take a look at that account and allocate, like whether it's for physical therapy or resident gifts or whatever the purpose of the donation is for, we're going to need to be restrictive and keep an eye on that. So we're going to set up, I'm going to meet with the staff at the nursing home, we're going to set that up. What that does mean is right now they have signing capabilities, so we're going to have to start a new bank account, which I'm suggesting we move to Bank of New Hampshire from Citizens, because that's where it is now. And we're going to have to change all the signature authority, and then we'll have to change the procedures in the way that it's handled moving forward. So that's really the implication to the trustees. The difference in the research and the conclusion that I've come to is that the non-capital accrued benefit and the capital reserves are not under the purview of the trustees and can be treated like any other fund. So there is no, even though it's reported on the MS-9 and it is considered under the MS-9 trusts in Department of Revenue, it is not required to have authority every time there's a transaction in that account. So that's really the only difference. Those two accounts, all of these accounts are audited by the auditors annually. But the capital reserve and the non-capital reserve for accrued benefits are just normal county funds that will be handled the ins and outs through normal everyday transactions. So what I gave you was what I need to give to the executive coordinator for the annual report. Excuse me. With beginning balances, the activity throughout the year broken down as reported on the MS-9, and then the year-end balances. And then behind that, I gave you a draft of the MS-9. If you're happy with that, we'll add the trustees when they're appointed, and I think the only one after today hopefully will be a delegation member, and hopefully we can expedite that. And then in the very end of your packet, I did give you a breakdown of the non-capital reserve for the accrued benefits, just what has happened in the last 2 years, from January 22 to January 23. I also did send this to the executive coordinator if you wanted it or needed it in the annual report in any way. So
Commissioners, any questions?
Who's the county general fund? Is it a fund?
Yeah, it's
General
just the
fund?
county fund, yeah, county
Title
general fund.
somebody had.
Yeah, so you're basically general fund, nursing home fund, grant fund, yeah.
Commissioner? Any
No, I'm
questions?
good for now. I do, but yeah, I'm good for now.
I'll make a motion to accept.
Second.
Point of order. The CFO said that the duty fund, there was no restrictions on it. Isn't that fund restricted for training for nurses?
As far as it is, there, we cannot find any restrictions on it. We did take a portion of it when we renewed it, and we did put it in a fund specifically for nurses training. The Eleanor Black Seidlinger Nurses Fund is for education, specifically
I thought the
noted.
duty fund, and I thought the treasurer had sat here one day and had lunch with us and said that was purposely for training. So when you said there was no restrictions,
We've looked everywhere that we can find, and we cannot find anything. So if you know of something, we have looked and gone through all the historical information that we can find. We've talked to the nurse, oh, I'm sorry.
Do you mind if I add something?
No, go ahead.
Sorry, I know I'm talking to your back.
Go ahead.
During the initial research, I went to probate and I pulled the information from probate and then contacted the original law firm that drafted all that paperwork when she passed away. And I have confirmation that there's no restrictions from that law firm. So
is that a document you could forward to me?
that's public information at probate too.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Sure.
So if I may add, I think you, between the three of you, one of you needs to be elected as trustee, and then you also need to vote, I believe, right, for approval of this into the annual report, Melissa?
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yeah.
See, everybody's jumping for this one.
I will be feeding you all the information that you need in a similar format, so.
At
How
least you're
much
going to
time
get to
do you
know. I
think it
didn't
would
even know
take?
I was on there before. No one told me.
Bonnie, how much time commitment do you think, and could it be handled on Thursdays when they're already here?
Oh, yeah, I mean, there was probably, out of the gift card account, which is the only, there were probably 5 checks written in all of '23. So, we're not talking a lot of activity.
I'll do it. I mean, I'll do it. Nobody wants to do it.
I'd rather want some, so, good for you.
Somebody has to do it. I'll do it.
It was your
Whatever
motion.
you want
Do
to
you
do.
want
Make a motion to check the person. Commissioner McKee?
Second.
all those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And then do you want to vote on that report, if it's okay?
Motion?
To accept the, it's the MS9, right?
Yes. Well, the report, the top page is what is needed for the annual
Oh,
report.
the annual report, yeah.
Yeah, and then the MS9 just needs to be signed when I'll add you as the trustee and the treasurer.
So what is the actual motion to accept?
Just the top page, the annual reporting for the annual report.
Okay, it's actually the top page for the annual reporting, and it's a little bit detailed, but, so I'm not gonna read it all, but anyway.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you.
That was fun. It was fun.
So the next thing I have, I need a motion to authorize the sheriff to sign the equitable sharing agreement and certification for the chair.
And what exactly is that?
It's, here, let me take a look. And,
Do I have that in my?
no. Not that I know of that you have it in there. Melissa just gave it to me.
Yeah, I received it from the sheriff yesterday. That's the annual reporting he has to do on the federal seizure funds that, in an account that the sheriff has access to spend funding from for specific purposes. I believe last year they bought laptops using that fund. And I'm happy to get him to come over if you'd be more.
Well, I don't like getting it 2 seconds before I'm supposed to approve it. I haven't read it, I haven't seen it, and I'm gonna do it.
Okay.
Is there a deadline on this?
I will find out, and I can ask him to come over. Yeah,
Ask him to come over, please.
sure.
I mean, it's something that we do every year.
Yeah.
Okay, and then we have to appoint someone to be on the Sheriff's Department, the CBA negotiations. And we normally have one commissioner sit in on all the negotiations and report back to the other commissioners.
I did the nursing home, and somebody else would like to do CB for
Yep,
this
I
one,
think,
it'd be fun.
Mr. And I have done the jail, so Mr. Nelson, if you would like to be appointed,
Sure.
okay, I'll make that motion.
Well, it's gonna kill me for all this, you know. I get a county funeral or
We might
something.
have 2 or 3 meetings.
Okay, that's
yeah.
all right. Make a motion.
Second.
Okay, all those in favor, say aye.
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 Thank you. And Madam Chair, if Commissioner Nelson could check his calendar to see if he's available on April 25th at 1 o'clock. It's a Thursday. That's when they'd like to have the first meeting. And just let me know. Thank you.
Sure.
Okay.
Is it 21st, you
The
said?
25th, 2 weeks from today.
Okay, no, I won't know till I check
Thank you.
my calendar at home.
Okay. Next, we have the letter of interest for the Hayfields. Will, do you want to come up? We can look at this to you. Well, I guess, who would like to open it? Yeah, you were here yesterday.
I open now? or do you want
Madam
to-
Chair, it's a, because it's not a competitive bid process, you're not required to open it during the meeting. But if you'd like to, obviously it's your choice, or you could just allow time for the DPW director to review it.
Yeah. That's-
Nope.
Totally your call.
What would you commissioners prefer? Do you want to open it or just give it to the DPW and let him come back with us?
It's fine with me.
Okay. We'll give that to you, Will.
We're not gonna take any action on it right this minute.
No.
No.
And just so the public knows, we only got one letter of interest, is that correct?
That's correct.
Okay. So I guess you can just stay right here and we'll do the lands, the water system.
Underwood.
Yep.
George and Amanda are going to join us today.
I printed the slides for them, but I can share those up on the screen. But they all have the packet and card. So, okay.
Morning, everyone.
Technology, it's a little confusing, we got new stuff. So, okay. Thank you.
That's fine. Yeah, I'll just run off the line.
Madam Chair, can I sit on that side?
You sit wherever you want.
Just that way it's easier to be more like a conversation in the way here. Sure, wherever you'd like, I just thought I'd be across from you guys. It might be
Yeah.
easier.
Oh, you and I? Good to see you again.
Together, but we'll be very nice.
So we just wanted to do an update on where we are on the water project. So I was going to run through the evaluation that we did of the existing sources, and we'll talk about contract 3, which is the county meters that are going in, the meter and chlorination building improvements up there, hydrants, residential meters, fire pond, asset management plan, budget and schedule.
Okay.
Madam Chair, can you tell everybody to speak up a little?
Yeah,
Oh,
I
I'm
can't
sorry.
hear you, I can't hear it all over here.
Okay, I'm sorry. So the first is the evaluation of the existing water sources up there. We received the report from EGGI, which is the hydrogeologist that we hired to help do all the pump testing and stuff up there. Some conclusions that they came up with was that the capacity of I'll talk about the bedrock wells first and then the dug wells separately. So the bedrock wells need to be considered, they are hydraulically connected, so when we're looking at capacity, the capacity of those two wells needs to be considered together, not separately. And they recommended a sustainable capacity of 25 gallons per minute could be withdrawn, regularly from those bedrock wells. They noted that the water table when we first started the tests was significantly depressed. It was down over 300 feet below grade. And then we did notice some recovery of the water level in those bedrock wells as we went through the fall and we started using the dug well. When we first started, just well 2 was being operated, bedrock well 2. And there were mechanical issues with 1 and the dug well, so everything was kind of relying on 2, so that one had been pumped. As we started, testing with the other wells, there was some recovery in the bedrock wells. All right. Water quality was noted, was good in the bedrock wells. There was slightly elevated radon levels, 4,000 to 5,000 picocuries. Radon's unregulated. DES really doesn't even recommend doing anything above 4. Below 4, over 4, they recommend just to check it regularly, and then, if it gets between 4 and 10, gets upwards of 10, they recommend, looking at your exposure from radon gas, in homes, check the radon in homes and buildings and that sort of thing, to look at the total exposure. So not a big issue there. There was some iron and manganese observed in one of the samples from bedrock 1. The other sample was well below though, so it may just have been because bedrock 1 hadn't been used in a while. We don't know, but it's something that you can kind of monitor in the future. I think you have seen a little bit of it, right? Because in the bottom of the tank, when you've had it cleaned, there's been a little bit of sediment.
Yeah,
but not a huge problem. So, kind of borderline with iron manganese on bedrock 1. And then the pH of that water is pretty elevated at, around 8, which is good for, corrosion prevention and that sort of thing. So there's no pH adjustment needed there. Some recommendations that came out of that, the study on the wells was maximum individual pumping rates of the wells, 20 gallons a minute for bedrock 1 and 25 for bedrock 2. The pumps that are in there are rated for 36 and 30, so we do need to throttle those back a little bit to keep the operating ranges back where is best for the aquifer. They also
Could ask, what's being pumped out of them now? Sort of rate, do we know that?
I think bedrock well 1 is in the 20 to 22 range, and we're pumping out of that, right? That and the dug wells is what we're on right now. Right now, our bedrock well 2 is just a backup well. We're hardly pumping any water out of it. I'm not sure.
So we don't have to restrict water at all at this
No,
point?
no, no.
Okay.
No, I think they left it throttled after we did the pump
So there's like
tests.
a valve in there, and then we can change the valve to whatever number we're looking at. So that's basically what we just got it throttled back to not pump as fast.
Just reading this, it makes it appear that you're gonna have to throttle, you're gonna have to me beating it.
Well,
You'd have to pump less water.
Right, if the pumps are wide open and just pumping straight through, they would pump 30 to 36. So the valves are throttled to keep it down to.
But we're at that level now, 20 or 20?
Roughly, I think that's what we left it at the end of the pump tests. Bedrock 2, I'm not sure.
I'm not sure on
Check
that one,
that
yeah.
one. That might be pumping more, 25 to 29-ish.
Okay,
Could
thank
be,
you.
so, yep.
I did the last quarter, the quantity report for the state just a couple weeks ago in bedrock 2. This last quarter, I think we pumped like 9 gallons out of the thing.
Yeah.
I mean, we're not using it
Isn't
at
it
all.
much? Okay.
So,
Give it a rest.
right?
And then they also recommended maintaining water levels in the wells above the main fracture zones, which is about 420 feet for bedrock 1 and 434 feet on bedrock 2. Right now, there's no way to tell that because there's no level monitoring in there. We're proposing to put that in as part of the next project. And with the SCADA upgrade, get that information recorded and sent down here so that will have it. Because right now it's kind of blind, as far as operation of the wells. We don't know what the groundwater level in the wells is doing as you're pumping them. So we're going to get that information. And then another issue that we did notice was after bedrock 1 was shut off, it was siphoning through the pump house. And I don't know if you remember the last time I was here, but 1 is much higher than the pump house and the tank, and so I think it's creating a siphon which then keeps going after the pump is shut off. So we need to do some more investigation on that, of what the best fix is, so that to make it stop pumping when the pump shuts off. And that, again, we're looking at doing that in the next project. This graph is the long-term level monitoring in bedrock 1. You can see on the green part of it how it kind of increased. Well, the up and downs, the zigzag is pumping, right? So the water level goes down when it's pumped, and then it recovers back up when the well shuts off. That's why it's zigzagged. But there's a general trend upward which is the well kind of recovering. As I mentioned before we started all these tests, bedrock 2 had just been pumped by itself, which depressed the water level in that bedrock aquifer. So as we started doing work and we got the dug well pump fixed up and got that back online and running, we were able to use the dug well some, which kind of took some of the stress off the bedrock aquifer. So you can see the kind of the general trend of the water level in that aquifer recovering. The first blue is the pumping of the dug well. That's when they did the pump test on the dug well. So you can see that both the bedrock wells at that point are shut off, and the water level, the slope of that curve is much steeper than what it's been recovering at. As the bedrock wells are off and they're allowed to, the water level in that aquifer is allowed to recover. Then you'll see it dives down on the pink section, and that was just normal operation after. The dug well itself isn't able to keep up with the system demand, so like over a long weekend kind of thing, we had to run the bedrock wells to refill the storage tank, get it back up to operating level before we started the next pump test. So I think bedrock 2 was pumped at that point. And then the next blue line that goes down steeply, that's the pump test on this well that we're looking at in bedrock 1. So you can see the significant decrease in the water level in the well as it's pumped during the 2-day pump test. The pink is when it was shut off and allowed to recover again, so no wells were used during that time. And then the second, well, I guess it's the third blue line on there, is when bedrock 2 pumping test was occurring. And you'll see there's quite a drop in bedrock 1 when bedrock 2 is pumping, and that's what tells them that the wells are hydraulically connected. So when you, regardless of which one you're pumping, 1 or 2, the water level of both of them goes down at the same time. So they're pumping out of the same bedrock aquifer. And then the next one is the monitoring in bedrock 2. Again, you can see the zigzag is just the normal pumping before we really started doing the pump tests. Similar, recovery of the water level when the dug well W1 was pumped. Drawdown when we were doing normal operation before we started pumping the pump test for bedrock 1. Less decline. You'll notice that second blue line is less on this graph than it was on the previous graph because it's the other well being pumped, but there's still a decline in the water level. And then the second one has a steeper decline there because that's this well that you're looking at being pumped. And bedrock 1, that previous graph, the water level when we started was much lower. You know, we were in the 350, 400 feet below grade level with the water level. It wasn't as bad in 2. And then your pump intake is the brown line that's down there on the bottom. Fractures are kind of in this zone here, so we want to maintain the water level above. On the dug wells, they concluded that the shallow unconsolidated aquifer is independent from the bedrock wells. As we did testing on the dug wells, there was no impact on the bedrock wells. The piping between the 3 wells is still unknown. W1 is the well that has the pump in it that it's pumped out of. There's 2 other dug wells, 2 and 3, that are upstream of that, presumably connected through piping, but when you look at the long-term water level monitoring versus rain versus pumping of W1, there's no indication that they're connected, especially with 2. Could be the valves are closed in there and they're not connected. Could be the pipe is collapsed. There's no plans of them. So there's still some questions still some investigation to do up there. They appear to the 3 wells appear to be independent of each other. You know, when you look at the water levels, there's no common threads. And they concluded the sustainable capacity of the dug well is 12, which was consistent with the permitted capacity from the DES, and it's also consistent with the rate of the pump there. So that's all in line. Good water quality from those wells. You know, shallow wells are more vulnerable, if you will, than bedrock wells, but you know, with where they're located and you haven't had any past issues, and the water is chlorinated in the pump house anyways, so it's not a real concern, but just something to be aware of. The pH is a lot lower in those wells, between 5 and 6, much lower alkalinity, so you know, that's something Will does want to consider when he's blending the wells. You know, just that the pH and the corrosivity of that water is much different than other water, but usually, I mean, the way it's set up right now, the dug well runs with bedrock 1, so you're mixing it anyways. And then this well had a much lower radon than the other ones did at about 1,000. Some recommendations that came out of that report. They recommended additional investigation on the dug wells to try and confirm that they are connected and that the piping is open, the valves are open. Additional pump testing and monitoring to better evaluate the sustainability of those wells during drought conditions. You know, there was plenty of water in those wells last year, but you know, it was a pretty wet summer, it was a pretty wet fall. They were great. You know, 3 or 4 years ago, you know, we had a pretty substantial drought. You know, we don't know if the yield of those wells would withstand that. You know, so that's something to keep an eye on. Recommendations for long-term level monitoring and additional pump testing. And again, we're looking at the level monitoring during this next upgrade. Once we get that information, it's coming in, Will has it, you know, then you'll be able to have some data and be able to, you know, further assess some of these things, like if we have a really dry summer, what do those wells look like? Are they still doing well and we can pump out of them, or do we have to back off and, you know, rely more on the bedrock wells? They recommended the installation of watertight covers on all 3 wells to prevent potential contamination. We're looking at doing that on the upcoming project. And we did notice that same siphoning of the dug well after the pump shut down. So again, we're looking at that. And they recommended trying to use the dug well regularly, especially in the spring and early summer, when you can when you've got lots of water, to reduce the stress on the bedrock aquifer, kind of give that a rest, because you know, if you need that to carry you through the summer, it would be better to kind of have that in a recovered state. And this is the monitoring in W1, which is the pumped well. So you can see throughout the early fall there, we were pumping out of that well. That's the up and down with the green, downward trend of the groundwater slightly, mainly because we kind of came off of a pretty wet summer into a little bit of a dry spot in the fall when we started this, and then we had some rain events later on. But overall, it's not hugely impacted. The blue is the actual pump test on that well. You can see where it was drawn down, not significantly again, not terribly. Recovers, and then the other two blue spots here are the pump tests from the bedrock wells, and you can see there's no effect on the dug wells when the bedrock wells are pumped at all. All right. And then this one is the long-term monitoring of well 2 that was done, kind of a downward trend, more significant downward trend over the course of the testing. But when bedrock W1 is pumped, absolutely no change in that water level, which is kind of raising the question of maybe that valve's closed, maybe that's not actually contributing to W1 at this point. And then the last one is of W3, and again, fairly different level profile than what was on 2. Where 2 was decreasing over time, 3 went down, came back up in response to some rain that occurred. We do see a slight decrease in 3 when W1 was pumped, which would be expected, and then we continued to decline over the time we were monitoring. So as far as the source capacity, all that long-winded way to get here, the source capacity evaluation was what we had originally done back when we started the study. We looked at it 2 different ways. Small system rules are for small systems, 25 to 1,000 people supplied. I think you supply 250-ish. So you're a small system, but the small system rules apply to systems without fire protection. You have fire protection, so technically you're not a small system. But we looked at it anyways, just because, with your service area, it is kind of a small system. The required capacity using the small system rules would be 76,000. You have an available capacity of 53,000. Again, they don't technically apply. And the small system rules are very conservative with respect to source capacity, because there's usually not a lot of storage, right? You're usually operating on just storage for domestic. You have a lot of storage in your tank, for the fire protection and that sort of thing. So that gives you a lot more flexibility in operating the system. So that doesn't worry me. We also looked at it in terms of a large system, which are defined as systems serving greater than 1,000 people or with fire protection. You fall into that because of the fire protection. With those kind of systems, we're required to meet the average day demand with the largest source out of service. Your average day demand estimated is about 20,000 gallons per day. You have an available capacity with your largest source out of service of 46,000 gallons per day. So you meet that. The other criteria is to meet maximum day with all sources in operation. Your maximum day was estimated from past data was estimated at about 26,000 gallons per day. Available capacity is 53,000 gallons per day with all the sources. So you meet that criteria also. I didn't. Yes. So your existing source capacity appears to be sufficient for your existing uses. A few caveats with that. These demands that we're looking at are based on kind of very general data, meter readings from monthly meter readings, sometimes quarterly meter readings divided over. Typically, we would see, max days more on the order of double what an average day is. Yours is 19,000 or 26,000, so it's a lot more compressed. Just based on the data we have. Again, I think once we can get the SCADA system upgraded and get more data going down to Will and being recorded, then, we'll know more. But it's just something to consider when we're looking at, we far exceed our maximum day demand. My guess is your actual maximum day demand is quite a bit higher than the 26 that we're looking at, but it's the best number we have at this point based on the historic meter readings that we have. We did notice, and it is a little of concern, the amount of drawdown that you had in the bedrock wells when we started after kind of, it was a pretty wet summer. We started the work and said, wow, there's quite a bit of drawdown in these wells. So again, something to watch, something to be, just to be cognizant of. And the fact that the two bedrock wells are connected, so you have two sources, but they are connected, they do affect each other. Obviously, if there's a mechanical failure, you've got a full backup on the other one, but if it comes to, a water quality issue or something, it could affect both wells. A lot of the eggs in one basket, but, not terrible. So overall, we're saying you've got enough source capacity to meet what you need now. I think we would recommend that, any new development, any significant new developments, I think you'd want to be rolling in a new source as part of that. It's all qualitative, right? If you're going to put this building online, it's not without a huge water load or something, it's probably fine. I know when we did the original report, I think we looked at like another 50 beds in the nursing home, something like that can be accommodated. But if we're going to talk, I know there's been discussion of developments and, if we're going to add 300 housing units, I think you should plan for an additional water source, to bump up your supply if you're going to add something significant like that to the system. And just in doing that, if you are doing that, any new well would want to be, they would want far away from the existing wells, so I don't know how much land you have up there, if you can, at least 1,000 feet away kind of thing, or whether you'd be looking over on the side of the road and tying it in, but that's where we stand with that. Any questions with the source before I go on to?
How many did you say used a day? 26,000 gallons or something?
Average use, it runs around 20. We did some monitoring too when we were doing the pump test. We were monitoring the level in the tank.
Just to envision this, how many gallons is a big oil truck? How many does that hold? So I can picture how much water actually we're using here. Is it 5,000 gallons in a big oil truck, and we're using?
Are you talking like tractor trailer truck or like a
No, I'm talking like a big one that takes the water
like
down.
5,000-6,000 gallons.
Yeah, I think they're, I was gonna
Like a
say
septic truck's usually like
Yeah, I was gonna say about
5,000-6,000 gallons.
5,000. If you're looking at a semi, you're looking closer to 10,000. Right?
Yeah.
Okay, so two trucks. Okay, thank you.
So, looking at a couple of those a day possibly. On high, it varies. Our system varies from 16 to 20, depending on the quarter. Certain quarters we use a lot more water than other quarters.
So the county, getting the large meters in the county buildings so that you can monitor that usage. We had an RFP sent out to 6 firms. We got 2 bids back. The contract is being executed. We have a contractor signed it. We're getting Will to sign it today with the low bidder, and the work is scheduled for first week in May. Is that about right?
First or second.
Contract 4 is going to be the big contract I've been talking about with upgrades to the meter chlorination building and tanks up there. A little piece of it was already done under contract 2 with the meters and the piping in the building. And then we're working on the final design docs for repairs to the building and upgrades, site upgrades, repairs to the tank and getting that cleaned, updating the SCADA system, as I mentioned, so that we can get more information collected and get it sent down here to Will so that he can access it. And then doing some of the work on the dug wells that was recommended as part of the, those inspections and the well pump tests. So we're finalizing that right now. We should have it out within a couple weeks, looking for summer construction on that piece of the work. Contract 5 would be the old Route 28 water main replacement. We completed a 30% design on that, sent it to DOT, the town, and everyone for comments. We received DOT comments. We're still trying to schedule a meeting with the town to go over it with them. Then we'll get the boring scheduled, the subsurface investigation. We're looking at, bidding late fall, winter for construction next year. Anything else that I missed on that? And then some other projects, the hydrant replacements, the hydrants have been purchased. We haven't really done any assistance on this. I assume, are you planning on doing those this summer?
I'm hoping this summer. I still have to get a hold of our contractor and see how his schedule is. I've been kind of more focused recently in putting a higher priority on getting all the new meters put in the homes in the buildings here.
And so, yeah, the next one is the residential meters. Again, have been purchased. We haven't really haven't really needed our assistance on this so far. We did set up, Margaret's going over it with you today. I know she does have forms set up in the GIS software that was purchased for the asset management grant to be able to track it and, keep track of all the new meter information in there, so it'll all be electronic there. And then the fire pond, we haven't done any work on that to date. The asset management plan is grant funded. So far, the field data has all been collected and mapped. The county's done the hardware and software purchase, and they're doing a training workshop with Will this afternoon to go over what's in it, how to use it, what additional information we need to add to it, that sort of thing. And as far as the budget, so we've been working with an assumption of $2.1 million in funding, $2 million coming from your county ARPA that was set for it, I guess. We had a $50,000 planning grant, which has been 100% dispersed. That was used for that source evaluation that we just completed. And then the asset management grant is $60,000, and that's been about half dispersed so far. I think, Melissa, put in your packet a update on the budget sheet. Total with all the numbers we're estimating, we're looking at on the order of 2.4 million total for all the work we're looking at getting done. That's a fluid number that changes as we get bids in, as we refine things. So far, we've spent just under $400,000 to date, which is about 16% of that budgeted amount. County meter projects coming up, that's about $40,000, and then there's about 1.6 million budgeted for the other projects. The hydrants replacements, I don't expect to be much, but the big ones are going to be the pump house and the storage tank improvements, and then the water main out of 28. We're looking at probably $1 million on that. That's where the big money is. So that's where we stand. Anybody have any questions on that? Okay. And then schedule-wise, I think I already mentioned most of these. We're looking at the meter building and storage tank for this summer. Complex meters are going in next month. Residential meters, I just put this year, next year. I don't know how long it's going to take you to do those.
Yeah,
it can be quite time-consuming because you have to get appointments to get into people's homes. And,
right. My goal is sooner rather than later.
Right.
But, hopefully it all works out that way.
Can you put that budget slide up one more time before this, please?
I got it.
Appreciate it, thanks.
You have better control than I do here.
Thank you for that.
Yeah, so the meter building and the storage tank this summer, fall, hydrant replacements presumably this summer, and then the Route 28 water main, we'd be looking at finalizing the design in September, getting it out to bid late this fall, with a target of construction for next summer. That's all I have.
Pretty easy.
Questions?
A couple. How big a problem is the siphoning problem?
It's not a problem necessarily. It's just more of a control issue. Like you think you're turning the pump off,
But you can't.
but it's still running. When we were up there, the dug well, which has a much lower elevation difference. That I think the day we were there, might have siphoned for like 5 minutes or something, kind of slowed down on its own and stopped. Well 1, which has a much bigger elevation difference,
15, 20 minutes.
you know, that was like more like 20 minutes before it stopped. I mean, I guess the only effect is your chlorine pump is turning off when you think you're turning the pump off, right?
So when the pump kicks on, we got a chlorine pump that kicks on simultaneously, so if the pump's off and it's still doing water, obviously that's not putting,
chlorine.
yeah, right? But
So you're getting that 20 minutes is going into the tank. I mean, it's mixing with the chlorinated water in the tank, so it's not like it's...
And you don't know how to fix that yet, right?
Well, we're looking at a couple different things. I mean, you know, we could potentially do a vacuum breaker or something, but, you know, an air release valve up at the well, but, you know, in order to do that, you gotta put a manhole in. It's, you know, not a cheap thing to do, you know. We're thinking we could put maybe a solenoid valve in the pump station that's interlocked with the pumps to force it to stop flowing when the pump stops, you know, but that means we need to get into that piping, and then there's always the, you know, you're relying on something that needs power, failure of that, you know. You have to build in a lot more control, backup controls, you know, for a failure of something like that. Yeah, so we want to do a little more investigation on it, on when it's happening and what we can do there.
Watertight covers, is that a big deal to do?
Not a huge deal, but it wasn't originally planned, you know. What I'm thinking is that they're basically, the dug wells are basically like concrete manhole structures with flat tops. So I'm thinking we pull the flat top off, we put a new cover on that has like a lockable hatch on it. You know, better for access,
Raised higher
more
or
secure.
or still at ground level?
Well, they're raised up anyways.
They are.
They're like waist height anyways.
it's basically like
So they're okay.
a piece of metal on there right now with 4 bolts.
It's just bolted on, so
That's
it's hard
all
to,
there
it's hard to
is.
get in and out of it, you know, because you have to undo the bolts all the time and it's not totally secure. You know, so I'm thinking just new covers with locking actual hatches, you know, that you would have, you know, a lever and open, just for better access for operating on those.
And the one other thing you make note of is you suggest if we do a new source of water, you have it away from the existing. How far away would that be?
They were saying at least 1,000 feet. So, and then on top of that, remember when you have a source, you need a sanitary protective radius around it that you own and have control, or at least have control over. So, you know, usually it's like, you know, it'd be like a 400-foot radius or something around the well. You know, so that's the kind of area you're looking at.
Yeah, we have plenty of land up there to do that. It's whether they find water there or not, would be the question. But we could still stretch out for the amount of, you know, feet, yards that she's talking. You know, we got a lot of land on that side. It's just whether the water's there and it's essentially a different source. It's got to be different.
Right.
Bedrock, you know, you want to be in the same one.
And that's why I think they were saying, you know, get at least 1,000 feet away, because, you know, we don't want a third well in the same the same bedrock aquifer drawing the same water. That doesn't help so much.
Okay, thank you.
Madam Chair, do you mind if I ask 2 questions? We have 2 commissioners that are coming in like midway through this process. I'm wondering if you could explain the reason for the Route 28 main replacement.
Okay.
And the second thing is, do you know if there's any other available funding, grants, programs available for the 28 main replacement and also the fire pond? Thank you.
Yep. Fire pond, I don't know. I can't think of any fundings that would apply to that necessarily. Funding for Route 28, you could certainly submit to Drinking Water SRF, which we submitted, I think we submitted an application last year. The problem is the ranking criteria, right? So they have ranking criteria that they look at of each project to determine which projects get on the funded part of the list and which ones don't. You know, they only have a certain amount of money each year. So, you know, you can apply each year and hope that you move up, or hope that there's less applications as time goes on and you can get into the funded portion. The problem with water mains is, as far as criteria on the ranking, they put a lot of weight on contamination, source deficiencies, those kind of things are kind of viewed as more important than a water main replacement that's old, undersized, that kind of thing, which is probably why we were too far down in the ranking last year to get funding.
And there's a lot of those do that, oftentimes like a 50-50, more of a loan than a grant straight out.
Yeah, they're loans, usually with some portion of principal forgiveness. 20% used to be common. It's all over the place now because there's so many different sources coming in. It all gets routed through the drinking water SRF. But if you've got emerging contaminants, I mean, we've had people get, with emerging contaminant issues, get up to 70%. But again, it's those systems that have multiple issues. They have source issues, they have contamination issues, they also have storage, distribution, all together. Small systems that can hit all of the criteria have been doing well more recently, and then obviously the contamination and the source deficiencies are the ones that rise up into the funding part of portion.
And to add to Melissa's question on why we're looking at that one, is it's a 4-inch PVC main run down through there versus the rest of most of ours are 8-inch ductile line through most of our system, and that was like a spur that the history that I've gathered, a spur that ran down to the state shed down there, and then people have hooked onto it over the years, but we don't have the same volume, the proper volume probably going down there, but we also don't, there's a hydrant down there, so it's probably not feeding the volume to the hydrant, and then also we're looking at a PVC pipe that's not going to, we've been in good shape and lucky, but that's got limited, life and durability to it.
For the most part, the rest of all of your distribution system was replaced in 2001 with that last project,
Right.
Whereas we look at the plans and we go, why didn't they do that? I mean, I'm sure they ran out of money, right? It's all right, well, we won't do that spur line, everything else. So everything else is 10, I think it's 10 going down to the square, and then it's 8 breaking off of the square. This one's a 4, so it's undersized. You don't have the fire flow, down that street that you should have, or that you have on the other streets. So that was the rationale.
And how many homes do we serve down there?
Total in the village, I think we're around 47, 48, just shy of 50.
On that line that we replaced?
Oh, that particular line, no, that's total. That particular line, geez, I would say it's got to be a dozen or
20,
better.
yeah, I was going to guess 20.
Yeah, I'd say 15 to 20.
It's quite a long line.
Yeah.
I think I counted 15 just driving to the post office the other
15,
day.
okay.
That's about right.
Because a couple of them are duplexes. A couple of those houses are duplexes.
Yep, so I got some.
And there's a
And
couple
the
that
fire
sit
station.
like behind each other.
Right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay.
Any other questions, or, I just was gonna say that it's, thank Lynette for coming on that, and I think it's important that we finally kind of got an idea of what our sources can have. There's been a lot of questions, I know the land committee, about, what we have for capacities and what we could add on to and what we can handle, and I think that's good that we saw what we have is sufficient.
Yeah.
If we're gonna add on big projects, we're gonna need to look at that.
Right, yeah.
As an additional source to handle those projects if the county moves that way. So I think we've had a lot of numbers back and forth, and I've had other, delegation members asking me, and I'm like, well, these are what we think, but we don't have the final numbers, so I think it's kind of nice to have the more of the final and more of, this is definite of what you have and what you would need if you add on.
Right, and I feel like at this point, the only thing we really don't have is like finite numbers of, as far as the evaluation of this is what your average and max day flow is compared to what you have. We know what you have now, so that you could say, oh, we have this much excess,
And I think those finite numbers aren't going to be significant enough to make a difference in the decisions that they're making on a larger.
No, and like I say,
Possibly,
based, in the hydrogeologists, we had a meeting with them earlier this week, and they're kind of in the same place we are, you're good with what you have, small additions you can handle, it's not, it's not like you're you're running on the slightly deficient side. I mean, I think you have probably a slight excess of what you need, but not a lot, you know. I think any
Not
big.
enough for a housing development.
Yeah, I mean, any big developments, I think you definitely want to be, you know, planning a new source in with that. And that's something else, you know, and maybe that's something you want to start looking, I mean, if you know something's coming down the road, you know, it does take quite a while to get a new water source. I mean, you could start doing the, kind of the evaluations of looking at where on your property you could locate a new source. You know, they start out with like, you know, kind of desktop things with geologic maps and that sort of thing, and then they move on to doing typically some geophysics. They go out and they do some ground penetrating radar and things to look at the density of the bedrock and how cracks, and I don't know what I'm not a hydrogeologist, but that's kind of the process. You know, it goes from desktop to kind of some unintrusive field evaluation, and where they pick some sites, and they'll usually say, you know, these look like promising sites for these reasons. A lot of times they do that in terms of, you know, for towns and things, like these are areas you might want to look at groundwater protection, or, you know, look at, you know, easements and those kind of things to keep development from happening if it looks like it's a good aquifer kind of thing, you know, so it might help steer you before you get into, you know, actually drilling test wells and finding a well kind of thing.
Okay, thank you very much.
Is there anything else, Madam Chairman, you need from me at all?
I don't think so.
My only question is, should we keep a copy of
Yeah,
the letter?
I was gonna ask Melissa if she could make that, a
Yeah.
copy of the
From
board.
test,
I'll
and
just
then she
take a
gets,
copy.
yeah, seal this.
Yeah.
We're gonna have him sign these now to
Oh, yeah.
Melissa over.
Oh, yeah. Melissa on there is the second signature, witness signature. Oh, sure.
The sheriff's on his way over.
Okay.
Yep.
And I think that's it. After that, right, you just said a non-public?
Yeah, turn on A and safe, please.
Did it now?
No, the sheriff's coming back. Yeah.
Have you seen this?
Yeah, we do whatever we want.
No, have you seen this one? Oh, we get what you can.
I just got it at the same
Yeah,
time.
it's right here. Just go down. And then- Really good.
So what do we actually do with that?
Just that he can sign for me, because I'm on there, and then he can sign.
Oh, we already have the name tag there. One of those is your copy.
One of the three.
Yeah.
Can we keep one of this?
It's
all
Yeah,
signed
those-
by everybody here.
Whenever they get a procedure or something, it goes in there on one t-shirt.
What do they do without grants? Usually there's grants for everything.
Well, there's like,
So I don't know what they're, I know what the ones, let's see.
we'll just put this in there. You don't need, we don't need to copy these together. You have this.
Yeah, as far as I'm
What's your calibration and final?
plenty almost. What do you need? Yeah, there's a lot, there's a lot of buffer there.
They didn't need it.
Sure, there's a lot of damage over at your house and that road from the.
Nothing. It was all by your house. It's all your fault.
Oh, okay.
I'll see if you knew anybody in Comcast, I mean, in that, yeah, Comcast.
Yeah, or you can talk to me about that.
So as soon as the power came back on, the internet came back up.
Yeah, I would think we could do that now.
Yeah, we don't, I don't know that out yet. Safety and security of it.
I melted water on the stove and then flushed the toilet. That's all I cared.
Clean up anything, I'll get the shop.
You feel like it's up before
Thank you,
storm?
if you wouldn't mind explaining that.
You told me about that. You have a bathtub?
I mean, you guys have shot.
Good idea. Told me about something before. Well, I don't do that.
Okay,
See?
so I think we're going to ACR.
Yeah, that place says
You
security.
keeping busy?
And then,
Yeah. Chief's meeting this morning.
oh, yeah.
ACR.
Yep.
I'm sorry.
Are you seeing,
ACR.
uh,
Okay. Good morning, Sheriff. Okay. Commissioner?
Just a quick one,
Yes.
since Commissioner Nelson and I are both the new guys, just take me through how this works a little bit.
All right, so this is the, it's a federal compliance report for money that was seized during drug cases
Okay.
around the county. And this was established before I became sheriff. So annually, we have to make that report out. And I did talk with the CFO to get some of that information. There was money spent last year for a laptop during the, for the oxygen forensics equipment that one of the deputies does for, that she can download phones and laptops and any other devices like that for information during drug cases or any other cases. So that's the amount that was deducted off of what we had for a balance.
And you get to, the sheriff gets to expend that?
Yes. Yeah, it has to go to one of the purposes that's allowed.
Okay.
Yep.
Great.
Okay.
Motion to approve.
oh, we're gonna make a motion here? Oh, no, let's go non-public and make a motion. I second the motion.
To approve the,
The
Yeah.
the equitable sharing agreement and certification, and to allow the sheriff to sign.
I'll second that motion.
All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
And it would be also to allow me to electronically submit your signature.
Yes.
Yep. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Donna.
Ready to go?
Yep, we're ready to go.
I'm going to make a motion to go into non-public session. A, dismissal, promotion, and compensation of any public employee or the disciplining of such employee or the investigation of any charges against him or her unless the employee affected, one, has the right to a meeting, and two, request that the meeting be open, in which case the request shall be granted. C, all right. Matters which, if discussed in public, would likely affect adversely the reputation of any person other than a member of the public body itself, unless such person requests an open meeting. The exemptions shall extend to any application for assistance or tax abatement or waiver of a fee, fine, or other key if based on initial inability to pay or poverty of the applicant. We go on to I. Consideration of the matter relating to the preparation for and the carrying out of emergency functions, including training to carry out such functions, developed by local or state safety officials that are directly intended to thwart a deliberate act that is intended to result in a widespread severe damage or property or widespread injury or loss of life. So roll call on this one?
Yes, we need a second.
Second.
Okay.
Roll call.
Roll call. Commissioner McGee?
Aye.
Nelson, aye. McCarthy?
Aye.
11:17.
So we'll do the aye and the, on one side first.
Public input though, is there?
It's the Haylander.
They should have it.
brief. It comes
Yeah.
through real quick.
I asked,
They should.
months ago I asked for that, because it's something to think about during the meeting.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean, it would probably be beneficial to have him write up what he wants to do
And then
versus us, but that's,
yeah, okay, either gone.
I guess.
Other things that are more important.
that would be my,
Yeah.
that too, like, oh, wait.
Could have just let me look at that letter real quick. I only have one.
I mean, Steve knows how to do this stuff, so I would think he'd be able to come up with it once.
And this one's a pain in the
It's
ass.
just deciding if we can do it this year or next
I
year.
just come off that way, I'm not really trying to do that.
We'll get ahead of it better for next year.
Next year.
Make a motion, and we come out of non-public? or-
Yes.
Okay, we make a
And seal the
motion
minutes.
Out of
Second.
non-public, and that we seal the minutes. Second, read one of these things.
Nope.
I read it.
I would appreciate it.
And you seconded? Okay.
I read it.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 1209.
And we have, need a motion to employ Matthew R. Johnson to go over our contract with Siemens.
Make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor, say aye.
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 Is that a municipal attorney?
Yes. I'm going to say it is.
Specializing in contract law, I believe,
Yep.
is our,
Okay. I will make a motion to adjourn. We have no more.
Yeah, let's stay a while.
Can I-
Make a motion to
Madam Chair, may
adjourn.
I ask
Second.
a quick
You may.
question? The RSA 91A was changed a few years back. Just as I left, they added a stipulation that you can't go past 10 years before reviewing all your non-public minutes. Did that ever happen here? Because I don't recall you ever going in and reviewing all those previous minutes.
We've got,
Actually, I think the RSA is that we have 10 years to go through all of our minutes.
No, that's not what it says.
Do you want me to pull it up?
Can you destroy them then?
No, it just says that, so you
We
used to
can
be
make-
able to do things indefinitely,
yeah.
and they
We can do
changed
that.
it.
Yeah, we have done it a lot, not since we've been in this building, I don't believe, but we did it over there quite often.
I only say that because if it goes on for years and years, and all of
Yeah.
a sudden you're sitting in a room for
Doing
a week
100,
trying
yeah.
to get to do
Actually,
thousands.
I think Melissa and I just talked about that not too long ago,
Yeah, we did. Yeah, we did.
because I know with Kim and Matthew, we did a lot of them. I think the question was, it's going to be difficult because we have two commissioners, and they have no idea about the non-public meetings, what was going on with the the non-public minutes. And we have to approve to keep them sealed or make them public.
Given next year, so everybody has 3 years, and this next term going around, isn't all the vacancies for
No, there'll be a 4-year and 2 years.
2 years, so.
Okay. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. And it is 12:10?
12-12.
12:12. Okay. Thank you, gentlemen. I think we only have one thing in the basket, Melissa.
Okay, and then, can I have that letter back too? Is that okay?
Oh,
I'll give you all a copy of it if you want one. I only have one. How do you want to, do you want to have Will next week? Or?
Yeah. yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
So we're going to have to answer the continue on tonight. Should be voting that next week too.
Yeah.
Okay.
That's the school.
Yeah, this
Um,
I'm going to hand this to you before it gets lost.
this last
Yeah, it
paragraph.
says here, it says, "This review shall occur no more than 10 years from the last time the public body voted to prevent the minutes from being subject to
So,
public
the way
discussion."
the way I thought it was,
If they're not reviewed within 10 years, the effective date is fair to be subject to public disclosure without further action.
12-13.
so the review shall occur no more than 10 years from the last time.
I think the
So
only
that
ones that
means If
I don't know if there's
minutes
still
were sealed in
any-
2020, we have to release them by
That
2030.
Babson and Amanda and I did.
Right, that's how I'm reading,
that,
we have
you
10
know,
years.
We kept them in.
If we
I
have
remember
minutes
you
that are
reviewing
dated
that.
2012, we should
But
that
have
was a
those
while
now.
ago.
Oh, yeah.
Right?
Been
Or
2 years. But we did some too, Kim. We try to do them every
I remember
week or
when
so.
you
Yeah.
and Kim did,
Yeah.
and I think Flash was there too.
Yeah.
But I don't recall anything after that.
No, we haven't done any since then.
But you had a lot of non-public, so that's less than 10 years.